Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So I was thinking about how Joel was a good stepfather, but how also the character, the way he is written, is a great father. And we need that in more of our culture due to fatherlessness and men really buying into red pill, which is a degenerate hedonism, and doesn't really focus on how to be a good dad. Because daughters will witness how poorly the father treats the mom, how he sleeps around, and that causes a strange divide between father and daughter. And so when we look at how Joel acts in the beginning of the game, we see that he rushes home to make sure she's okay. Good father, right? There are dads out there who won't even call their daughter, let alone rush home in some scenario like that to make sure she's okay. He further protects her right away from that neighbor who becomes infected and tries to attack. So he's the type of father from the get-go that will use lethal force to defend his family. Very noble in that regard. Then he and Tommy and all of them, they're in the car together, and when they crash, eventually he gets out and her leg is hurt and he has to carry her. Now, one thing that I found to be quite beneficial in examining that relationship is it is a good thing to have a physically fit dad, because we don't think about that as much anymore. Men often get insulted if they focus too much on gym life and stuff like that. But if we are moms, we would want our husbands to be in shape and to have some strength, because Joel carrying Sarah helped keep her alive until they met the Fedra military agent who was given orders to mow them down. And as we know, Sarah tragically perished, not by her father's lack of protection, but by him thinking that they could make it out, and then him for a temporary moment trusting the federal government in a time of crisis, which really goes to push us to realize that the federal government is not always there to protect you and yours, right? And so when we also examine how Joel in the beginning was carrying his daughter Sarah, and how he carried Ellie out of the hospital, we see that he maintained his strength when he's fresh, right? Proper nutrition, all that, because the apocalypse hasn't happened yet. And then during a time where you have to scavenge and food is scarce and resources are low, he is still strong and is able to carry out Ellie physically out of the hospital. Now, the thing that's also interesting is the amount of running, like jogging, the fast pacedness. So not only do you have to have upper body strength and leg strength, you have to have stamina. Yes, it's a fictional character, but it also hints at the fact that our men today are more out of shape due to office jobs, and how we are really losing that expectation of men to be physically fit, right? Due to processed foods, men deciding to drink instead of work out, and if you're drinking alcohol and using drugs, that's really a strange way to harm your body, because if you want to be healthy, you can't be drinking a lot and using drugs, right? So a man who focuses on his health is going to be very valuable in a time of extreme crisis. Looking at how Joel was physically fit and mentally fit, I think that's a very good role model for fathers. Okay, so Sarah, we can see right off the bat, it looks like Joel was a single father from all measures. We don't really get to learn about Joel's wife. We don't know if he's divorced, but I think he's a widow. Something, because the mom is never mentioned. And I believe that there's some books, but I haven't read those books, so maybe there's a detail in there about the mom. But regardless, in that moment, he's a single father. We don't see any sign of a mom's clothes or them trying to find the mom to get in the car to escape. It's single father. So already right there we see a single father who is doing right by his daughter and is being there for her. And that sets the tone for how he was such a good caretaker of Ellie while he could. And he's not only just a good father, but he's a good human being overall. And again, it's kind of sad when you think about how in the game, he never met another woman who he married, right? Some people speculate about Tess, but there's no hardcore evidence of a relationship there, more of a business partnership with flirtation. But he doesn't really get to marry again, whereas his brother Tommy does. So there's that contrast there of Tommy gets to start again when Joel doesn't, before he's murdered by Abby for taking out Abby's father when he rescued Ellie. So I really liked that in the game, because I think it's important now to tell men how to be good fathers. Give them an example. And Joel looks like a middle class, good old boy, right? He doesn't look like a pimp, a playboy, a sports star, a rapper. You know, he looks like someone who would work on a construction site or in a factory, something middle class, blue collar. And I really enjoyed how he's portrayed in the game. It just goes to show how there can be good examples of fathers out there that young men can look to. And it's not just all about how many women do you have rotating on your roster. But when things go south, a father's duty is to step up. And I like that. It's truly noble. It's a lot different than other zombie genres. The Last of Us did a great job in highlighting how someone can be ruthless with their enemies but merciful towards the younger folk. And that is something that Joel highlights really well. And you see further how much he cared for his daughter Sarah, and how it pains him to look at pictures where he feels like he has to close that door, because when Tommy, they're in that water plant or whatever it's called, the hydro plant, something like that, he has a picture of Sarah and Joel together and tries to give it to Joel, and you can see some pain there. But later on, Joel does tell Ellie that he thinks Sarah and him would have been good friends. And so you can see this sort of welcoming happening. And I really think that's a trait women can look for in men today. Is, do you trust this man when things hit the fan? Can he be a leader? And can he be the type of leader who knows right from wrong? Who knows what transgresses limits and what doesn't? And if you were to pass away, would you trust this man to be the full protector and provider for your daughter, for your children? It's a very important detail to analyze. But when selecting a mate, if you are returned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tad bit early from than you expected, is your man competent enough to protect the vulnerable ones that you've given birth to when it matters most? And a lot of people go through wartime, but in wartime there's anarchy, but you can escape some areas. The infected, it's like you have so many enemies. Think about that. You have the infected, you have the runners, the bloaters, the stalkers, these cannibals, hunters, different factions, the federal agents. Like, they have, it's like free for all. And so a man who can perform under that kind of pressure and stay level-headed and not be consumed by evil shows an exemplary code of conduct. And so when you look at Joel as a whole, you can just imagine if Sarah would have lived, how he would have been to her. You can see that demonstrated through Ellie. And so from the little glimpse that we got to see with what kind of father he was and how he mourned for his daughter, we can tell that he definitely cared for his child. And that's a great thing to include in a game. The way Joel treated Sarah and mourned for her death was different than how Alexios in Assassin's Creed Odyssey mourned for Phoebe, or Phoebe, however you want to pronounce her name. And she's a smaller chapter, right? Whereas you can tell Joel carries that with him, and Joel, when he wanted to protect Ellie, really wanted to make sure she was alright. Whereas Alexios kind of seemed to move on really fast, especially after he met his mom, reunited with his mom. So I just found it interesting how that kind of conduct is demonstrated in games. Because men are playing these games, right, getting invested. And so we get to see some unique examples in fiction that allow us to examine the world in which we live now. Let me know what you think, what that relationship we got to see. It's a key moment in the story. Key moment, because one of the hardest things is for parents to bury their children. It's always not protect us. It's a heavy thing to go through. And Joel having to hold his daughter and hoping that this soldier of the government is going to have mercy on them, and then he just opens fire, and then he has to see his daughter's light leave. It's absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. Some people might even go insane after something like that. But if you notice, Joel from the get-go sees the world has changed right then and there. That the federal government is not going to be exactly who they think. Not going to be the saviors. They have a system, but what is that system that you have to adopt? It's a very interesting thing to speculate on when you examine that fictional world and the hierarchy of it and how it all pans out and how they're not able to maintain control very long before revolutionary factions and confederacies start to rise up in just lone groups. It's really intense, and that Joel navigates all that. So right from the start, Joel's toughened up, and then he has to survive for 20 years in that world, being a smuggler with Tess and whatnot, and then becoming the guardian of Ellie by default, and then losing his life because he trusted the Fireflies. Think about that. He almost lost Ellie because he trusted the Fireflies. They were going to take her life in order to try to find some cure, they thought. And he lost his daughter's life because he trusted the government. So Joel knew this time that you had to be careful who you trust. If you can't trust the government, you can't trust the revolutionary factions of the Fireflies, you just have to stick to your own kin. It's a very unique lesson. And you can see what kind of father Sarah had. And then you can speculate further. The wife must have been top notch to have the affection of Joel and for them to have a relationship together. And so if Joel was a widow, a male widow, whatever you call it, I don't know the word for a male widow. I don't remember if there is one. But either way, he doesn't have the affection of a loving woman, and he lost his daughter, so he doesn't have the affection of a loving daughter, but he still carries on in a world where death permeates to such a wicked level, and where you have to constantly strive to survive. So he was a champion among men, and I find that to be remarkable. And the character is done really well. The voice actor's perfect for it. The design looks like someone you would see mowing the lawn on Sunday. I like an average looking character, not someone who's ridiculously trying to look like Phil Heath or too scrawny, or looks like someone you would actually know in the real world, which makes it even more unique. It's great. Let me know if you have any other thoughts, and if you'd like to join my blog and support the channel. It's www.subscribestar.com/ManhuntArchive. Hope to see you there.